Now, Labour has ruled out finally introducing a self-ID system to allow people to change their legal sex without a medical diagnosis. So previously, if you remember, Keir Starmer said that the party would introduce a system if they won power. And so essentially this is all about whether people can self-identify and whether they can say they are in a different body without actually having a medical diagnosis. Let's join now Stephanie Davies-Arai, who is founder and director of Transgender Trend. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So finally, it seems that as the Labour Party possibly senses the whiff of power, they are changing their policies, and obviously they're now ruling out this idea that you can self-identify as a trans person. What do you think about that?
Well, it's really welcome, and I don't see it as a U-turn with Labour. I think there's nothing wrong in changing your mind based on the evidence, and the evidence over the last few years has been really clear of the damage done from effectively a self-ID policy throughout society and policies throughout societies such as toilets, changing rooms, refuges, and the scandal, of course, that we saw at the Tavistock. So all of the evidence has been building up about the harms of a kind of self-ID policy already being put in. That needs to be strengthened. It doesn't need to be added to or given more free rein. It needs to be strengthened for the protections of women and protections of children. So I'm always very glad when I see a political party have the courage to change their mind and to look at the evidence and to listen, in this case, to women who've been historically ignored in this argument and painted as bigots and transphobes for raising those concerns. So to me, it's a real positive, and hats off to the Labour Party for having the courage to stand up and change their mind and concede those points.
For me, this is good because common sense prevails. So under the current rules, people who want to change legal sex have to provide a medical report showing a diagnosis of gender dysphoria. You have to also live full-time in your acquired gender for at least 2 years. So it's important. And, you know, I speak as a medic here. I think it is really important that you have medical intervention here. You know, you can't go willy-nilly and then decide you're in a different gender. And you mentioned a really good point about the Tavistock. I was looking back at the figures. In 2009, they had 70 children who were referred to them. And by the time they got to 2022, it was 2,500 children. Now, you're not telling me the number of trans people went up that significantly.
And 8,000 on the waiting list now. So, and there's one point of what Labour said that I really disagree with, and I think that it's a kind of concession the Labour Party feel that they have to make to show that they're on the side of trans people, and that's a political reason rather than a good policy, which is to reduce the number of doctors required before a person can apply for a gender recognition certificate. So they only need one doctor's note, basically. Now, that could be a private doctor. There are still so many gender-affirming doctors who would just pass through. So we need safeguards in that area strengthening, not made easier, because what happened at the Tavistock, exactly the same is happening at adult clinics. And you have to remember that adult clinics take young people from age 17. And there you have the gender affirmation approach that signs these young people through onto hormones and then onto surgery with very little questioning or exploration of what's really going on. So those clinics, which are run by the NHS, there are NHS pilot clinics now, we do not need to have one doctor. We don't need to encourage that further, to consolidate that even further. We need greater safeguards, actually, with the adult clinics, as we've needed at the Tavistock.
Well, you make some great points there. And when you look at the CAS report, the evidence was that they showed 97.5% of kids, and you mentioned young people there, they actually had autism, they had depression, they had things, other problems like anxiety, abuse problems, for example, that then were manifested by them believing that they were trans. And you're right, it's about safeguarding this. It's
about the most vulnerable children who are suddenly deciding that they're trans. We need to know why. Kids from care homes, you know, the kids who suffer previous trauma, and have mental health issues. So those children and young people, that doesn't stop when you reach the age of 17, 18, 19. Those young people need proper NHS standards of care. And what they've had so far is an activist model of care at the Tavistock, and that is going on in the adult clinics. There is another point here about the relaxed rules for a doctor's note, is that the UK has a list of countries, and this is on a sort of security and safety level, and applies more for safety of women. I'm talking about men here. Coming into the country legally as women based on the process in their country of origin. And we have a list where only men and women, but men mostly we're concerned about, coming into the country, they have to have had the same level of gatekeeping, if you like, or the same rules as this country. So if we relax our rules for gaining a gender recognition certificate, we allow in more countries that meet that level. So there'll be more people coming from abroad, more men who are legally women who are just accepted into the UK. Now that's an issue as well with this. So my feeling is that what Labour are doing, and one thing that's really positive about Labour is that they actually use the term biological women and support this strengthening or clarifying of the Equality Act to make that really clear that sex means biological sex. That's for the protection of women.
Indeed. And well, I think it's about time that politicians actually were able to define what a woman actually is. Thank you so much for your time, Stephanie Davies-Arai, founder and director of Transgender Trend.